This Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, the 24th ranked undefeated Illinois Fighting Illini travel to Lincoln, Nebraska to play the 22nd ranked undefeated Nebraska Cornhuskers in Memorial Stadium in Lincoln. An undefeated top 25 matchup in Big Ten conference play, and a traditional Big Ten game at that, as Illinois and Nebraska, as I mentioned in my Nebraska versus Illinois preview and prediction video, which you can find and I encourage you to watch via the link in the top right corner of your screen. This matchup has been an annual happening since 2014 and perhaps earlier, but I know for a fact it's been occurring annually since 2014 when these teams were a member of the now defunct Big Ten West Conference. Rest in peace to the toxic and chaotic Big Ten West, and the fact that, with rare exception, it was pretty much Wisconsin and Iowa that won it, with Northwestern and Purdue making some appearances. Illinois could have in 2022, but they didn't. They went on a unfathomable losing streak in November. And Nebraska in 2022, ironically enough in the same year, I picked to win the Big Ten West, and that aged rather terribly. But what I want to do today is not focus on the past or not go into my usual preview and prediction spiel. If you want that, again, link in the top right corner of the screen. What I want to do is give you 5 reasons why I believe the Nebraska Cornhuskers will win this game. And later today, in the same fashion for my USC versus Michigan videos, I want to give you 5 reasons why I believe that Illinois will win this game. With games that intrigue me, or big-time matchups, mostly in the Big Ten, but occasionally outside, I like to look at these games from all the angles and take both sides of the argument, whether it is for my prediction, whether it backs it up, or whether it counterpunches it. I am picking Nebraska to win this game 31-16, just for full disclosure and transparency. But there are reasons why Illinois can win this game. I want to start out with, though, the 5 reasons why I think the Cornhuskers will win. But before we get to that, I want you, yes you, to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this video around and channel around to other college football fanatics who love the game and are invested in it like we are, and make sure to comment your thoughts down below. Give your reasons, 5 if you can, why you believe the Cornhuskers will win this game. If you find it unlikely that the Cornhuskers will win, or you're just very confident in Illinois, try and give at least 1 or 2 reasons why you think Nebraska could win this game. And again, liking the video, sharing it around, subscribing, hitting the bell. If you want to, check out my Patreon page or merchandise store via the links in the description or down below in the pinned comment to support the channel. And also, make sure to join the Discord server. It's something I forget to mention at times in my different videos, but the Discord server is open. You can talk college football 24/7, and the link to that is both in my description and the pinned comment. Doing all those things helps out the channel tremendously, helps us to grow, get more viewers, get into the algorithm, and earn more money that we reinvest into the channel. But without further ado, enough of my talk about some things that aren't this game. Let's dive in. And reason number 1 is Nebraska's game control rushing offense. What Nebraska loves to do is control the clock, control the pace of the game, run the ball punishingly, and score points. That was their only path to success last year when they didn't have a quarterback. They have a quarterback now, and then 2023 quarterback Heinrich Haarberg has improved as well in year 2 with the system. However, the rushing attack is still an important part of Nebraska's identity. Dante Dowdle, Ramir Johnson, Emmett Johnson, Gabe Ervin Jr., Nebraska in total has rushed for over 500 yards and 7 touchdowns thus far, and on 104 attempts. They've done a pretty good job of running the ball, of controlling the clock. They've been a very systematic and disciplined team, very methodical on offense, and the ground game is a part of that. Yes, they want to pass more than they have in previous years, especially compared to last year when really it was not optimal to pass whatsoever. But they've improved, so they want to pass more. The ground game, however, especially against a team like Illinois, who also wants to control the pace of the game, is ultra critical. And it's the biggest reason in my mind why Nebraska will win. Because they have the better run game than Illinois does. They do. And they have the better trench play overall, but we'll get into that in a few minutes. These backs, Dante Dowdle really being the feature back, the best back on the team, Ramir Johnson being the more speed and space back. He's also a great receiver out of the backfield. Emmett Johnson being a younger player who, to me, was going to be RB1 entering this year, but he had success last year, and he'll have success this year in the rotation. And Gabe Ervin Jr. is really like the epitome of a power back, a battering ram. You have a lot of diversity, a lot of balance, and complementary football in Nebraska's backfield, and that's going to help them attack this Illinois defense in a variety of ways. And Nebraska, they can pass to their tight ends, they can pass to their receivers. Ultimately, though, especially when you look at the profile of Illinois' defense, what is going to work best is running the football, controlling the clock, limiting the amount of chances that Illinois gets to run plays. And if Nebraska turns those drives into scores while eating up clock, it's going to put all the pressure on Luke Altmaier and his receivers. And that plays to Nebraska. Reason number 2 why I believe the Cornhuskers will win this game is they don't turn over the football anymore. This is not Scott Frost. This is not last year in Nebraska. This is Nebraska with a foundation set, with a known identity. Again, not like Scott Frost, not like Mike Riley, not like the first year of the Matt Rule era where he was, trying to figure everything out, what was going to work best with Nebraska, and he was working with a very limited set of players and even coaches. He upgraded his coaching staff in the 2024 preseason. This team does not turn over the football. They have an average turnover margin of +1 every game, and they've only turned it over twice. Once against UTEP, I believe, and for a fact, one against Northern Iowa. It's the only time this team's turned over the football. They don't give it away, but they'll take away the football. And to me, that's impressive, honestly. I mean, they got a pick 6 against Colorado. They have done a very good job in both the secondary, the defensive line, the linebacker room of playing great defense. And you look at Dylan Raiola, he's only thrown 1 interception, doesn't put the ball in harm's way. Nebraska's running backs are great with holding on to the football, which was an issue last year in the beginning for Anthony Grant, and it was also an issue for other parts of the year. I think Nebraska has gotten better at holding on to the football, at power running. They've gotten better at everything, and that's reflected in their turnovers. Look at these statistics, for example, with Nebraska. Let's look at all the turnovers, and also we can talk about penalties too, because penalties and turnovers are really tied together in the sense of like discipline. Nebraska is averaging 7.5 penalties per game and 70 penalty yards per game, which isn't good. It's something that needs to be fixed. But with how impressive Nebraska has been, imagine how dominant they would be if they were more disciplined on the penalty side. But on the turnover side, they're absolutely disciplined. They have not thrown an interception in an FBS game, only threw 1 against Northern Iowa, an FCS team, and I would argue that was Raiola taking a known risk and relying on his receiver to come down with it, and he didn't. They only have 1.5 fumbles per game. They've had 1 fumble all season long. They're averaging, in FBS games, 1.5 giveaways per game. If you factor in the FCS game, it's 0.67, 2/3 giveaways per game. So not even 1 giveaway that's responsible for the offense per game. And yet, Nebraska is averaging 1.5 interceptions per game. If you look at Colorado and UTEP only, if you factor in Northern Iowa, 5 divided by 3, that's close to 2 interceptions per game. And they've played teams so far, Nebraska has, where like Shedeur Sanders, for example, he doesn't throw that many interceptions. His weakness is more, taking sacks when he needs to throw it away or trying to play hero ball, but he does not throw interceptions. And Nebraska was able to force a pick six and get close to making some other plays on him and his elite wide receiver core. And this team is, Northern Iowa is a fundamentally good team. They forced a turnover there. This is just a very disciplined unit when it comes to protecting the football and forcing the football out of their opponent's hands. So that's reason number 2. Number 3 is an elite defensive line. As I've mentioned before in my Colorado versus Nebraska video, 5 reasons why Nebraska will beat Colorado, which aged tremendously. Nebraska's D-line is one of the best in the Big Ten, consequentially one of the best in college football. On the season, they have had 8 tackles for loss and 4.5 sacks. At least when you look at their starters, it's obviously kind of a challenge to look at their entire 2-deep and get the statistics exactly, but that's what I was able to dig up. And on average, again against FBS opponents, Nebraska this season has done a pretty good job of getting to the quarterback. It's actually very impressive. They're averaging 3.5 sacks per game. Again, just counting FBS opponents, teamrankings.com, for which I get most of my statistics from, doesn't count statistics against FCS teams, which I think in the long run, especially, is pretty accurate because you look at Auburn, for example. They beat a bad FCS team by 70. They are going to be inflated in most power ratings for the rest of the year because they beat some scrub by 70 points, but then lost to Cal. Nebraska is sacking their opponents in nearly 10% of their dropbacks, which is top 25. And I would argue overall they just kind of had an off day against a Northern Iowa team that's very good at running the football, that has offensive line depth, that's strong, that's produced some NFL linemen over the past few years, and Northern Iowa just ran the football over and over and over again. They wanted to control the game, limit possessions. That's what smart coaches do against superior opponents. It didn't turn out, though, because Nebraska's a really good team. And when it came down to it, at least against UTEP and Colorado, their D-line did struggle a bit against Northern Iowa in stopping the run. But when it came down to it against their first 2 opponents, they got to the quarterback, they tackled their opponents behind the line of scrimmage, and they didn't even have a bad game against Northern Iowa. It just wasn't up to the, now black shirt standard. Nebraska had a great D-line last year. You expect it to be elite this season, and you'd expect it to return to the level that they played against Colorado when they face off against Illinois, rather than repeating the same mistakes for 2 weeks in a row, especially against an opponent that the staff knows is superior, that has that top 25 rating next to their name. Illinois is ranked 24th and they're undefeated. This is a critical game. Nebraska's defense ought to show up. Their defensive line is the most likely unit on defense to show up and have a big impact, especially given that Illinois' offensive line is not strong by any means. Up next, we have an improved secondary. The Huskers secondary shut down Colorado in week 2. They limited UTEP. They shut down Northern Iowa. And they have great depth. They brought in some transfers in the preseason. C.R. Wright, Bly Hill, and they returned the majority of their production as well. You're talking about Isaac Gifford. You're talking Tommy Hill, Marquise Buford Jr., Malcolm Hartzog. Tommy Hill, by the way, has a pick 6. And some other players that have interceptions are Malcolm Hartzog with 2 and Ramir Stewart. Nebraska's 4 interceptions and 11 passes defended on the season. This secondary is one of those units that can hold their own against an Illinois wide receiver core that I will talk about in my 5 reasons why Illinois will win this game video, that can win one-on-one matchups and that can burn and occasionally win battles against NFL DBs. They did it against Kansas. Mello Dotson and Kobe Bryant are likely future NFL players. I don't know about day 1, day 2, or day 3 on the draft, but they're probably going to play on Sundays, or at least Teams will want to try and get them out there on Sundays with their talent that they've shown off at Kansas. I look at this secondary, and they have the depth, they have the discipline, the upside. Tommy Hill's projected to be a first-rounder in this upcoming draft, and the coaching to hold their own, to come up clutch, and if the defensive line or the linebacker core has a bust, they can make up. That's what you see with these great defenses, and Tony White is a elite defensive coordinator. These players will pick up after each other. They will help each other. They will do their job, and when they occasionally slip up, as we all do, and as college football players will, their brother will pick them up and help them. And that is the spirit of elite teams with elite culture. And Nebraska doesn't just have a great culture, maybe one of the better cultures in the Big Ten. It's year 2, so I don't want to declare that, but they have talent on top of culture. And talent plus culture plus coaching, it's like reinforcing rope and adding an extra layer of rope. All you're doing is making that unit and that team stronger. This is a strong secondary. It's improved from last year, where at times they struggled to defend the deep ball. This is an interesting battle to look out for. As I mentioned in my Illinois versus Nebraska preview and prediction video, the main matchup is Illinois' passing attack against Nebraska's defense. So this secondary has to come to play. They have to make some plays, whether it's an interception or forcing 3 and outs by defending passes, or maybe forcing a pressure sack. Who knows? But this is a great defense, and it's not just because of their front, it's also because of their backfield. And finally, Memorial Stadium under the lights is an intimidating environment. Take it from a Michigan fan. When my Wolverines barely beat Nebraska back in 2021, it was loud. This is a fan base that is hungry for win over win over win. They're not going to be satisfied with just beating Colorado. They won't be satisfied probably unless Nebraska finishes the year with a winning record, if not ranked, based off of how many years they have gone without beating a top 25 team. The last time they beat a top 25 team was 2016, when they beat Oregon in Memorial Stadium. And that Oregon team sort of choked that game away by going for 2 on basically every touchdown they had, and they finished 4-8. Previously, Nebraska last beat a top 25 team, what was it, like 2014 against UCLA, or that's at least the last time they played in a top 25 matchup. Let me confirm that right now, actually. But Nebraska has had a long drought of competing at the top. Like, they've been at times, like in 2016, ranked at the top. But beating a team at the top, finishing against a team at the top, that's totally different. And it has been quite some time. Oh, they beat Michigan State in 2015 on an upset. But what about winning in a top 25 matchup? Miami, Florida wasn't ranked in 2014, so wow, I'm going to have to go even earlier. Was it 2013? No, not even 2013, though that was the last time I think Nebraska played in a top 25 matchup in Memorial Stadium, was against UCLA in 2013. You have to go all the way back to 2012, and then again, Nebraska wasn't ranked. I'm going to stop looking because I don't want to take up all of your time with this video doing something that maybe I should have researched prior. But then again, that doesn't really matter. It's just a fun statistic. It's not central to this game. What is central to this game is the fact that there will be crowd noise, and that's going to feed the defense, discourage the offense, and that goes to the advantage of Nebraska and the detriment to Illinois. I'm curious to see how Luke Altmaier will handle this environment and how Illinois' offensive line will handle this environment. I wouldn't be shocked if there were several false starts, even as early as the first quarter. Like, not just as the game goes on, but in the first drive or so, you see multiple false starts. Wouldn't shock me at all. Thank you so much for watching this video. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment your thoughts on this video down below. Thanks to Crash2488 and Nebraska Rascal for being Heisman members and sponsoring this video and channel. Thanks to Chris Lane, Kind of Little OH, Ismar, Tyler Nye, and Chilton Cush for being All-American members. And thanks to John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Seal, Austin Christmas, and Shanisha Cockrell for being All-Conference members. If you want access to my weekly college football picks, sign up as an All-American or Heisman member on my Patreon page via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. If you just want your name featured at the end of every video, the $5 all-conference membership works for you. And also there's my merchandise store. Again, the link to that is in the description and in the pinned comment. Have a great day, guys. Go Fighting Illini, and go Big Red.